I see confidence just coursing through my classroom in a way that I was struggling to establish earlier on. Does he think he can still hear the old man's heartbeat?
Yeah,
How do you know that?
because there's that same sound of when the old man was in his room and he got frightened.
I started raising my hand more, talking more, getting involved more, being more hands-on.
I'm actually on the edge of my seat. I'm like, now what are we doing? Because I'm excited to use it.
I feel very confident when I raise my hand using Amplify because it gives me work that I know that it's on my level.
When we read and they are not understanding maybe the first time that they do a cold reading, but we look through it together and they're seeing, oh, I did understand that because I was thinking that before we talked about it as a class, that confidence really pushes them to try things that they maybe wouldn't have tried before. And it's been really cool to see students engaging in more fiery conversations about what they're reading.
I know that's kind of impossible to be hearing a dead person's heartbeat.
Okay,
So I think it's unreliable.
I agree with that text evidence to support what you're thinking.
Middle school students are different. Every day is a new challenge. Students are finding their voices, while at the same time, their brains are developing at an accelerated rate. Brain science reveals that a fundamental reorganization of the brain takes place during adolescence, and that is evident to anyone who has ever spent any time in a middle school classroom. And as you know, the experiences that your students encounter have a lasting effect on their attitude towards schooling. Everything that happens in Amplify ELA is built on this premise. Middle school is the last real opportunity to recalibrate a student's trajectory. Think of it this way. Until Amplify ELA, literature programs have been built as either part of a grades K through 8 continuum or a grades 6 through 12 continuum. So educators in the middle have had to adapt and adjust every touch point in every lesson to meet the unique developmental needs of their students. But at Amplify, we are focused on that sweet spot in the middle. Let's start by looking at the program structure and its components.
Amplify ELA has a consistent structure from one grade level to the next. Each grade level offers 6 core instructional units, including a novel study, with additional options for grammar, poetry, research, and creative writing. An intentional progression enables students to work with standards multiple times over the course of the year with increasingly complex text. And Amplify ELA is designed for flexible delivery. Whether you teach fully digital, one-to-one, blended learning, remote, virtual, synchronous, asynchronous, the components align to your model. You and your students can use the program 100% digitally, but your students also have a consumable print text that they can use to read, annotate, and respond to the text in the 6 core units. Your students will also enjoy personalizing their unit-based writing journals, another place for them to draft, respond to text, and find their voice.
But most importantly, in Amplify ELA, your students will encounter great literature taught in fresh ways through thought-provoking reading selections that integrate diversity and provide a positive view of ethnic groups and genders.
The materials represent authors from a wide range of cultures and backgrounds. Coherent lessons focus deeply on the experiences and messages of those authors. Your students will bond with text through read-alouds from authors like Jili Zhang, as she recounts her experience as an adolescent growing up in communist China.
Students work in 8th grade with Caitlin Greenidge's narrative commentary, My Mother's Garden, is an important catalyst to discuss how Greenidge's encounter with the stereotypes of African American women in her classroom discussions impacted her intellectual and emotional development as an adolescent. And in a series of author interview videos, students get to hear Caitlin Greenidge speak directly to these experiences.
Your students will read, Analyze and interpret poetry with Shaquille O'Neal. Reflect on the Holocaust through a series of emotionally stirring interviews with survivor Irene Butter. And deeply understand the life of Frederick Douglass through a riveting narration from the late Chadwick Boseman.
And the images that jump off the pages of the print edition and jump off the screen of the online edition have been created intentionally by a diverse team of artists. And your students actually get to know them and learn the creative process behind the amazing art that they see on the pages of Amplify ELA.
So now let's look at how all of these things come together in an Amplify lesson. We know two things about middle school students. They crave structure and they thrive on activity. Amplify ELA lessons are designed to capitalize on the developmental needs and cognitive strengths of your students in the middle.
Every Amplify lesson begins with students working with vocabulary. They're introduced to the vocabulary words that they'll be working with in the lesson. And most importantly, this quick 3 to 5 minute activity gets them focused on the text that they are about to encounter. Then students read, interpret, and analyze text in a whole group teacher-led collaboration activity that varies from one lesson to the next. In every lesson, students are then responsible for producing something, a structured discussion, a presentation, a debate, and 2 to 3 times a week, this means writing to text. Students then share what they have produced, connecting it back to that focus standard of the lesson and completing an exit ticket. All of this happens in about 50 instructional minutes, an effective sequence of activities that meet your middle school students' particular needs for activity and stimulation. Each lesson also culminates in independent work. We call them solos that bridge to the next lesson. So let's see it in action using the first lesson from the Telltale Heart. Every lesson in Amplify ELA has a name. Lesson number 1 for the Telltale Heart is called Read Like a Movie Director, Part 1. This lesson focuses on the first 10 paragraphs of Poe's Gothic tale. Tomorrow's lesson, Read Like a Movie Director Part 2, will pick up at paragraph 11. The online lessons feature a sequence of activities that support the lesson structure, beginning with the vocabulary activity, moving into working with text in whole group, small group, and then of course ending with an exit ticket. To support your planning, you have a teacher guide that takes you through each activity in the lesson, and each lesson delivers instruction around that focus standard. You'll also see related standards to aid in planning.
When you start the lesson, your students get to work on an interactive vocabulary app that introduces vocabulary words from the lesson, provides instant feedback, and adapts based on their performance. Most importantly, this 3 to 5 minute activity warms up their brain waves and gets them ready to dig into the text. The text is always formatted the same way, text on the left and questions on the right. So every day your students are working in the same format that they will see on the computer-based standardized assessments. In this lesson, you introduce your students to the first 2 paragraphs of Poe's Gothic tale. They listen to an audio reading of the passage, visualize what they think is happening, and then sketch what they visualize. You can read the passage aloud, or they can listen to the professional audio included with every selection in the program.
And this is where the writing journals come in. Students sketch in their journals, and then you show them a professional artist's depiction of the same scene. As a group, you then read the next few paragraphs, and your students continue to visualize and draw, learning to read like a movie director. Students can annotate the text online, highlighting and copying and pasting text evidence and adding sticky notes, or they can work with the same text in their printed student editions, putting pencil or pen or highlighter to the page, connecting their thoughts to the text and making it their own.
In small groups, students share their sketches and how they connect to the text. As they share, and this happens every time that students share in Amplify ELA, you can project sentence starters to help guide and focus their discussion. Exit tickets at the end of every lesson give you a quick pulse check on all of your students, and they provide a critical daily data point. And every lesson culminates in independent work called a solo that students can complete on a smartphone. In subsequent lessons, students continue visualizing the story through a storyboard that we call telltale art. Students fill in the background images, characters, thought bubbles depicting what is happening first from the narrator's perspective, then do the same thing from the reader's perspective. And then they compare the two perspectives, leading to a deep understanding of the point of view and of the literary concept of the unreliable narrator.
When they finish the story, students have to construct an argument. Was the narrator insane, according to the Monotone Rule, the legal definition of insanity from 1843? Or was the narrator sane? Students support their claim with evidence from the text, and they argue their points in a classroom debate. This concept of low floors, high ceilings applies to every reading selection in Amplify ELA. In this case, students began by listening, sketching, and sharing, progressing to evaluating point of view, the trustworthiness of a narrator, and supporting a claim with evidence. This structure invites all students into the conversation, and supports are built in to meet the individual learning needs of your students.
For example, let's look at Lesson 3, where students are asked to write in response to text, something they do 2 to 3 times a week. The prompt asks students if they agree or disagree with the narrator. If you have students who need more support with the prompt, you can give them scaffolded questions and sentence starters. If you have students who need more challenge, you can give them a prompt that asks them to write a counter-argument. By clicking on the differentiation icon, you can align every one of your students with the level of support that they need: substantial, ELL, moderate, light, core, and challenge. When your students refresh their screens, this is the support that they will see.
In addition to supports that facilitate differentiation for your students, you also have built-in supports for delivering effective online-based instruction on student devices. Whether you are teaching remotely or in a classroom, you can click on the Start Class button and all of your students will be taken directly to the lesson that you have started. And of course, you can see which of your middle schoolers are in the lesson and which of them are not in the lesson. The instructional guide icon allows you to easily switch from your teacher view to the student view, so you know what the student screen looks like with one click. And students can hand in assignments directly through the Amplify platform. Or you can assign in Google Classroom, whatever works best for you. And for those important times in the lesson where you want your students' undivided attention, you can click the Eyes Up button to lock their screens on the platform and to lock their eyes on you.
Amplify embeds writing throughout the program in order to synthesize students' ideas, support deep understanding, and allow these rich texts to work as models for developing skills. Students are engaged in writing multiple days per week. The Get Started lessons in the first unit of each grade level begin with short narrative writing, designed to build the writing productivity muscle, jumpstart key writing skills, and establish a community of readers and writers. These lessons help support a positive, collaborative learning environment. In core units, writing instruction draws students into more complex work with text. The 10 to 12-minute writing sessions allow students to focus on one claim in response to an argumentative or informational prompt, use evidence from the text in support of their claim, and use conventions to communicate clearly.
And immediately when your students hand in those formative writing assignments, Amplify's automated writing evaluation automatically scores the focus, conventions, and use of evidence of each student's writing on a 4-point scale. In addition, that automatic writing evaluation provides continual measurement data about these skills each time a student writes, so teachers can understand patterns of progress, comparing one piece of writing to another, and prioritizing students for particular supports. To help you save time when providing feedback, Classwork provides a summary of 10 common grammatical errors in each student's writing. Students can click the toggle next to conventions to identify sentences with errors and quickly transition them into impactful comments and impactful revisions for your students. At the end of each unit, summative extended writing opportunities move students through a 4 to 5 lesson writing process to plan, draft, revise, and polish a multi-paragraph argumentative, informational, or narrative piece built on the unit skills that students have been developing.
Students also complete a unit reading assessment. Amplify's unit reading assessments are summative assessments that serve 3 important goals: assess students' understanding of the content from the unit, assess student mastery of the specific skills and the anchor standards from the lessons in the unit, and provide additional practice with the types of questions and activities and formats that appear on the standardized ELA assessments.
In the Amplify platform, you have instant access to student progress in real time, including the 3 key data points in Amplify lessons: exit tickets, writing to text, and solos. You can track student progress within the Amplify platform, and you can also pass student scores directly to Schoology and Canvas.
Beginning in Unit 2, Flex Days occur every 5 days or so in the lesson sequence. Clicking on the icon gives you access to the embedded assessment measure, which helps you connect your students who need help with the help that they need. The embedded assessment measure examines students' performance on selected reading and writing activities in the lesson, taking into account the difficulty of each activity. These reports group students who are at risk in each of the 3 core domains of reading, writing, and language. And of course, those Flex Day activities are built into the lesson design. You don't have to find time for intervention and remediation. That time is built into the lesson sequence in Amplify ELA.
Speaking of time, let's dig into the 100 lesson pathway, a great way to ensure that your standards are efficiently covered so you can do more in less time. If you were to total up all of the lessons in one grade level of Amplify ELA, you would see that each grade level contains about 180 lessons. By following the Amplify 100 lesson pathway, you can cover all of your standards in just 100 lessons, leaving extra time for things like the Amplify library. Amplify ELA students have digital access to the Amplify library. It's a collection of over 700 high-quality, full-length texts organized by reading level, genre, and subject. Students can engage with additional novel studies, and teachers can set up book clubs and reading groups and build projects around these texts. And students can use up to 16 different research collections to investigate deep questions of historical significance.
To expand the collaborative classroom experience, quests are immersive team experiences that allow students to work together to tour the world of ancient Greek myths, solve mysteries, explore neurological disorders, and strengthen understanding of current events. These week-long narrated projects build on the literacy skills students have been developing while shaking up the classroom routines and allowing students to take the lead.
Additionally, Amplify ELA includes Poetry in America lessons, featuring student-friendly, close readings by interpreters like the poet Richard Blanco, President Joe Biden, and Shaquille O'Neal. 12 novel guides are included as well for books that middle school teachers love to teach. A partnership with Newsella for additional readings on contemporary topics aligned to each unit. And a partnership with Quill that provides supplemental grammar instruction in addition to the grammar instruction already embedded within Amplify ELA.
You and your students deserve a curriculum that inspires them to read more deeply, write more vividly, and think more critically. A program that brings complex text to life and inspires them to find their voice at a critical time in their lives. Thank you for watching, and we are looking forward to working with you as you continue your review.